Hello, everybody, and welcome to Week 8 predictions of the NFL season. This is approaching the 2 month mark of the NFL. So let's dive right into it. I was 10-5 last week. So this week begins with the Minnesota Vikings at 5-1 and 3-point favorites, making the trip over to the Los Angeles Rams, who are 2-4. Minnesota has been a fantastic team this season, and they're still playing really well. That loss to the Lions the previous week was a really tough loss that they had, and I don't fully blame them for it, as they did match the Lions in damn near every single component of that game besides the score. The Rams had a good win against the Raiders last week, although there is an argument to be made that the Raiders threw that game away. And that also brings up the rumors that have been circulating surrounding the Los Angeles Rams. Cooper Kupp potentially on the move, Matthew Stafford potentially on the move. Just don't know a whole lot about what's going on with this team. Cooper Kupp is expected to play on Thursday, finally being healed from his injury. But this is still the Minnesota Vikings. Even with that loss, they are still a fantastic team with a defense that plays really well, an offense that is playing well, even with the rumors circulating around them potentially getting Matthew Stafford. I do like how Sam Darnold is playing for them, and I would not be surprised if he is their guy going forward. And I do have the Minnesota Vikings to bounce back and win this game in pretty handily fashion. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens at 5-2 and 8.5 point favorites make the trip into the division to play the Cleveland Browns, who are 1-6. It was reported that Jameis Winston is going to be getting the start for Cleveland, as Deshaun Watson is out for the season with a torn Achilles. I don't know how much better it's going to make Cleveland, but I do expect it to make them better. The issue is they're playing Baltimore this week, who is one of, if not the best teams in the NFL, playing absolutely fantastic football. Defense, a little bit of a question, especially with Marlon Humphrey, who knows his status at this moment. As of right now, it is uncertain. But that offense is still playing fantastically. Lamar Jackson had a 5 passing touchdown day against Baltimore last week, and Derrick Henry is playing some of the best football in his career. They're a really good team. I do have Baltimore winning this game. And again, just really have zero idea about what's going on with Cleveland this season. I expected a lot more out of them, but they just have been very disappointing. Next up, the Tennessee Titans at 1-5 make the trip over to the Detroit Lions, who are 5-1 and 11-point favorites. The Lions had a very good win against the Vikings last week, and they're playing phenomenally. Jameson Williams is going to be out for the next two games with a suspension due to PEDs, and while that does suck, Jameson Williams is their second leading receiver. I do think this is going to open the offense a bit more, with Sam Laporta starting to have a bigger role through these next 2 weeks. The ground game is still going fantastically. Jahmyr Gibbs had a great game last week. That duo of Sonic and Knuckles is what they're being called, between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, is a fantastic duo. And Tennessee, man, there's just not a good team defensively or offensively. Mason Rudolph is most likely going to be the starter again. And they played Buffalo well through the first half, but eventually they're going to collapse. And it's weird. This has been a really disappointing season for the Titans. I had a lot of expectations for them because of how much talent they have on that roster. But the quarterback position has been a massive issue, and I do have Detroit winning this game to improve to 6-1 on the season. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals make the cross-country trip at 3-4 to play the Miami Dolphins, who are 2-4 and 3-point favorites. The Dolphins were getting Tua back this week. That is a massive addition for this offense, as there are so many plays throughout the past 4 weeks where I'm watching and I'm just like, if Tua is in, he makes that throw or he makes the better read, and it gives Miami the win. There was that moment against the Colts last week where that exact same thing happened. And it's just really tough. But Tua being back is going to rejuvenate this offense, I feel. Miami's defense has been one of the best defensive units in the league. Even despite the record, they are playing some fantastic football. Anthony Weaver has them playing well. And meanwhile, Arizona's coming off of a good win against the Chargers, but they just have been very inconsistent offensively as well as defensively. I don't fully know what to expect out of them. And again, I'm a Dolphin fan, so I'm going to pick Miami either way. But yeah, I'm really happy to see Tua's return. Next up, the New York Jets at 2-5 and 7-point favorites make the trip over to the New England Patriots, who are 1-6. Last time these two teams played, it was a blowout victory for the Jets on Thursday Night Football, and both teams look very different since that game. The Patriots, Drake May is getting his third start once again. for a team that Jerome Mayo himself is calling soft, which is definitely not a good sign when your head coach is making statements like that. I do think Drake May has been playing well though. Even though there's both been in losses, theirs were against some really solid teams, and again with their defense now coming up to form. But Drake May himself is definitely playing well. The issue is they're playing the Jets defense this week, who for as much as up for all the up and downs that they have had this season, they have had their moments of playing some really good football, including against the Patriots back in week 3. Now for the Jets. I did not expect a lot out of the Jets this season, and they're coming to prove me right. Aaron Rodgers is just past his prime. He's 40 years old, coming off of an Achilles injury. He's playing about as well as I thought he was going to. And even the addition of Davante Adams, at least through the first week with him, has not been enough to truly help out this team. And of course, there's still time, but that time is running out. It will be extended for another week as I do have the Jets to win, but this is a massive week for the Jets. They need to win this one and build momentum going forward. And I do also like Jeff Ulbrich. I feel like if he was given a true chance to be a head coach somewhere else that's not a dysfunctional organization, he could be a solid coach. It's just the Jets are the Jets, and even though I have them winning, I don't know how the rest of the season is going to look. The Atlanta Falcons at 4-3 and 2.5 point favorites make the trip over to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are also 4-3. And man, do I wish both teams were fully healthy for this game. Last time these two teams played, it was an overtime thriller on Thursday Night Football. This time, Tampa's going to be without their top two receivers, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Mike Evans is expected to make his return after the Buccaneers bye week on week 11, so he'll be back week 12. And Chris Godwin is expected to be out for the season. So two crushing blows through the next few weeks for Tampa. At least when Mike Evans gets back, they're going to have another really. So they're going to have a Hall of Famer back on that offense. But until then, they're going to have to rely a lot on that ground game and going to really need guys like Sterling Shepard to come up and step up in this moment. I don't know if they'll fully be able to. That defense also did not look great against Baltimore, but it is also the Baltimore offense, and they play teams really well. Atlanta had a tough loss against Seattle at home last week. So they're looking to bounce back. They are the healthier team. I also do feel like they played Seattle well. It's just they had a few mishaps here. And those very few mishaps are what can lose you games in the NFL. In the end of the day, I do trust the healthier, more intact, and more kind of cohesive Falcons offense that we should be seeing on Sunday than I do with a hastily put together Buccaneers offense who really Baker's going to be throwing for a lot of these guys for the first time. Although I do expect Kate Ogden to have a massive day, I don't think it will be enough. So yeah, give me the Falcons. The Green Bay Packers are 5-2 and 4.5 point favorites, making the trip over to Jacksonville, who are 2-5. Jacksonville spent the last 2 weeks in London, ended that trip going 1-1 with a win over the Patriots. Last week, they are now back home to play the Packers, who are a fantastic team, have definitely exceeded my expectations for the level of offensive production they've had this season. And especially Jordan Love and the level of throws he's been able to make has been truly exceptional. It's a lot of fun to watch the Packers play. Again, not what I was fully expecting out of this season. They've definitely blown me out the water. And I've seen a few Packers fans online mention this game as a potential trap game. And I mean, I just don't see it. While Jacksonville did look good against the Patriots, it was also against the Patriots. When they've played other higher quality teams, they have struggled. And really, the Jaguars, Jaguars obviously should be a higher record. They can make an argument they should be a lower record. They've played a lot of one-score games this season. But still, in those one-score games, when they've lost, it's because of the defense just not coming up big. The Packers defense is a great defensive unit. The signing of Xavier McKinney has proven to be one of the most underrated signings in free agency this season. So I do have the Packers winning this game, making a trip over to Duval, and just getting the job done. The Indianapolis Colts at 4-3 make the trip to Houston, who are 5-2 and 6-point favorites. The Colts had a very confusing win against Miami last week. Very, very confusing. Anthony Richardson didn't particularly play the greatest. The defense stepped up in the second half, but again, they didn't particularly play the greatest either. Miami was able to move the ball relatively effectively on some drives, but a fumble in the red zone and a missed field goal, a fumble to begin a drive in the second half. It was really just Miami gave that game away, especially with poor clock management. But they're going against Houston this week. They can't be playing the same style as they did last week. Houston's a much better team than Miami could ever hope to be this season. And I do really think that CJ Stroud's going to have his bounce back game. He threw for 86 yards against the Packers last week. There's no way he's going to do that again. And if anything, he's going to make the Colts pay for even a thought that CJ Stroud has had a terrible game the previous week. So I do have the Texans to win. Also in part because Joe Mixon had a great game against the Packers, and the Colts ground defense is not really existent. And the Dolphins just couldn't take advantage of it because who the fuck knows why. But Joe Mixon is going to have a massive day. He did the first time these two teams played in week 1. I expect it to happen again, so I do have the Texans. The Philadelphia Eagles at 4-2 make the trip over to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are 3-4 and 2.5 point favorites. This could be a really good game, in part because both teams are so confused about what their strategy is this season. The Eagles' offense has looked great at times. It has looked terrible at times. It has looked mediocre at times. Who really knows how their offense is going to look any given week? And the exact same thing could be said about Cincinnati. And also, the same exact thing can be said about their defenses, which is they're inconsistent and need to show up more. And when they have shown up, they have won games handily. When they haven't, they have won close games and they have lost pretty bad games. So this is a game that is really a coin toss, and I wish I did have a proper coin, but I don't at the moment. And this is going to come down to it's probably going to come down to whoever has the ball last. And I could see that being Cincy. Zach Taylor does confuse me a lot, but so does Nick Sirianni. Either way, I do have the Cincinnati Bengals to win. In part because they're at home. I do think that environment's going to give them a little bit of an advantage. This is just a really confusing and weird game as a whole. But yeah, I do have Cincy winning. The New Orleans Saints at 2-5 make the trip over to the West Coast as they play the Chargers, who are 3-3 and 7-point favorites. Spencer Rattler getting his third start this season in this one, and he's been trying his best. The Saints are so banged up at this moment, it is insane, and there's not much he can really do with the amount of talent he has around him. They did extend Alvin Kamara, but Kamara can only do so much to help out this team. Meanwhile, the Chargers are looking for revenge. They wasted a beautiful game from Justin Herbert last week, going for over 300 yards. Not a single touchdown was scored by the Chargers. They're definitely not going to play too lightly with this one. They're going to want to bounce back, and they're going to want to play hard. I do have the Chargers winning this game, and I feel bad for Saints fans. They started off the season so well at 2-0, demolishing teams, and then you're going on a 5-game losing streak and potentially 6 after this week. It has just been a very rough season, but I do have the Chargers in this one. Buffalo at 5-2 and 3-point favorites also make the cross-country trip as they play the Seattle Seahawks, who are 4-3. Seattle had a 3-game skid on their hands, but they broke it with a win against Atlanta last week in what was a decently played game. DK Metcalf had a great game. Geno Smith played really well also, and the defense was able to contain a really good Atlanta offense. The Bills, through that first half, they were looking scared against Tennessee, but the second half came, and they started to dominate and play their style. It is the Bills, after all. They're going to be in every single game they play for the most part, unless it's Baltimore. I do have Seattle winning this, though. And I didn't mention it for some of these other cross-country matches, but it is really difficult for a team to go from East Coast to West Coast or vice versa. And Buffalo is just one of those teams where they've been starting slow some of these games. And it has lost some games. You can look at that Baltimore game and you look at, forgot who the other loss was to. But then they've won some of those games. Tennessee, Arizona, the Jets. It's just been a really weird season for the Bills. And they're 5-2, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like they're 5-2. So I do have Seattle winning this game. I feel like it's going to be a great game. That could come down to the wire, and I would laugh hysterically if there was a wide right to lose Buffalo this one. The Chicago Bears are 4-2 and 2.5 point favorites as they travel to the nation's capital to play the Washington Commanders, who are 5-2. Jaden Daniels, I believe, is expected to miss this week. There's no official word on his availability just yet at the time of recording. but I'm gonna do this assuming that Marcus Mariota gets to start. Chicago has been playing well this season. Their offensive line is doing enough in some games, but not enough in others. And we just saw Washington's defense really take control of a game, in part because they went up against a team with a very questionable offensive line. And yes, it was the Carolina Panthers. But in the end of the day, I do kind of feel like the Bears O line and the Panthers O line are relatively similar. The difference is Caleb Williams is a really good quarterback. He's become comfortable in the NFL. The game is starting to slow down for him, and he's been making that offensive line is making their job easier. He's he's getting the ball out quicker. He's doing a good job maneuvering in the pocket with his pocket presence. He's playing really well. But Washington, led by Dan Quinn, is going to be able to throw wrinkles into them. I do have Washington winning, even with Marcus Mariota most likely getting the start. Because he still played really well against Carolina. In a very short notice instance, he came in and put up 40 points against them. And yes, Chicago's defense is a lot better than Carolina's. But at the end of the day, Washington is a really well built team. Brian Robinson is going to be able to get the ground game going. Marcus Mariota can run it himself. Harry McLaurin is going to lead the way in the passing game alongside Zach Ertz. Austin Eckler can get involved. There's just a really well built team, and I do feel like that they're going to be a better team this week for Chicago. Next up, the Carolina Panthers make the trip over to the Denver Broncos. The Panthers are 1-6. Denver is 4-3 and 9-point favorites. And as of right now, it is a question of who's the starter for Carolina because it was reported that Andy Dalton got in a car accident. I wish him and his family all the best, who were also involved. He did not have to be transported to a hospital, so he's being checked out by the team's medical staff at the moment. And again, all best wishes for him. I'm not going to speculate too much on it in this. So I'm mainly going to talk about Denver. Denver is a great team. They've been playing really well this season. Definitely playing a lot better than I expected. Bo Nix is doing a decent job with what he's being asked to do. The defense is playing well, and they're 4-3 for a reason. They've had a lot of close games. They've won some really big games as well. I do really like how Denver's playing. I do have Denver to win. It's mainly because Carolina's defense isn't the greatest, and I do expect Bo Nix to have a very similar game to what he had against New Orleans last week, and this to be a very similar game to that game in general. So I do have Denver Broncos. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs, the only undefeated team left this season at 6-0 and 10-point favorites as they travel to Las Vegas to play the Raiders, who are 2-5. The Raiders are entering a bit of a fire sale. They traded Davante Adams. There's so many reports circulating that Max Crosby might be gone. If they lose this week, there's a very real chance that Max Crosby is gone and that a bunch of other pieces begin to get moved. Here's the thing with the Raiders, though. Aiden O'Connell on IR. So most likely is Gardner Minshew getting the start and Desmond Ridder as the backup. The Raiders have played the Chiefs really well in recent years. The Christmas game last year with that they won, a bunch of other randomly close games against the Chiefs throughout the past years. They're playing them well for some reason. And this Chiefs offense has not been playing well themselves, but I do have the Chiefs winning in part because of that Chiefs defense. Steve Spagnuolo's having that defense playing to a level that's even better than last year. And last year they won the Super Bowl because of how good their defense played. This Chiefs defense is the reason they are 6-0. It's going to be the reason they get to 7-0. It's a fantastic defensive unit. Give me the Chiefs. Sunday Night Football is the Dallas Cowboys at 3-3 and making a trip to San Francisco, who is 3-4 and 4.5-point favorites. I don't know how to feel about either of these teams. Last time we saw the Cowboys was right before their bye week when they got manhandled by Detroit. But I feel like that's going to be a good thing for the Cowboys. It was a game that I feel like they needed to have. They needed to lose massively to a much better team so that way they can enter the bye and rethink things. Reevaluate who they are as a team and what they like to do. San Francisco haven't had their bye week yet and still being massively banged up due to injuries, have not had that chance to fully regroup. DMC is still going to be out. Who knows how much longer he's going to be missing. Who knows how many more games he's going to be missing. Brandon Ayuk got injured in that game against the Chiefs last week. I don't think there's any official word yet on what his status is. I'm going to assume he's going to be missing games because that injury did not look great. And then Deebo Samuel, he missed last week. And again, no official word on his availability. He might be back for this one. I'm not fully sure. Either way, that Niners offense is not looking the same as it did last year, and they are desperately missing CMC's impact in the passing game. The Cowboys off of a bye on the road. I do have them winning. I think they're going to get over, not necessarily get over the hump, but this is their chance to hit the reset. And if they lose this one, there's going to be some chaos in Dallas. So this is kind of a must win for them. So I do have Dallas. Finally, Monday Night Football. The New York Giants at 2-5 make the trip over to the Steel City. They play the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are 5-2 and 6.5-point favorites. There's not much to talk about in terms of the Giants that everyone has not already said. They're not a good team. Daniel Jones is not the guy. They need to hit the reset button. Joe Shane, who knows how much longer he's going to have there as the GM. All that. I'm not going to repeat anything. The Steelers, Russell Wilson played really well in his first start. That defense is still a fantastic defense led by TJ Watt. And this Giants offensive line is not good. So I expect TJ Watt to feast. I do also expect Najee Harris to feast. Saquon Barkley had a massive game against the Giants last week. Najee Harris is having a really big season for the Steelers this year. He's going to have another big game, probably another 100-plus yard game with a touchdown. I do expect Najee Harris to have a really good game, so I do have the Steelers winning this one. And those are my predictions. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe if you're new. Really appreciate it. Leave a like, and I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.